The trail of the 3rd Army and the 19th Tactical Air Command of the 8th Air Force is marked by more than 40,000 white crosses. 40,000 dead Americans.
We were young and soldiers called to dedicate our lives in the name of God and country. Do what's just, boys. Go do what's right. A hot band of brothers waiting on our chance to add one more page unto the victory dance. Here am I, Lord, send me, send me. Victory lies in the spirit of the lives of the men who died for me.
Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" And I said, "Here am I. Send me."
This is Michael Broderick, Marine Corps veteran, actor, and Gallant Few board member. You are listening to the New American Veteran. Now here's Karl Monger.
Hi, this is Karl Monger. I'm here to ask you on Friday, September 22nd, to go to Amazon.com and order your copy of Common Sense Transition. This book is full of lessons learned about military transition, and it has some important things that our community leaders need to know so that they can help veterans transition and become effective members of the community that are living with lives full of purpose and hope. All proceeds from this book benefit the nonprofit Gallant Few. Again, Amazon.com, September the 22nd, Common Sense Transition. Thank you. Hey, this is Karl Monger, the founder and executive director of Gallant Few. I am really tickled today to welcome Stuntman Buddy Sosthand to the New American Veteran. Buddy, did I say your name right?
You said it right. Thank you so much, bro.
I practiced it, but I want to make sure I got that straight. I don't want to have a Hollywood stuntman, angry at me because you guys know how to do the ninja kicks and the backflips and all that kind of stuff.
No, negative. I wouldn't have to. It's just the last name. It's not that serious.
Yeah. Well, hey, there you go. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. And I know you come from a military family.
Sure, I do.
And you have done some pretty cool stunt work. And so I want to talk about some of that, but I also want to talk about this podcast that you do because the Great American Podcast, if I remember right, it's the name of it.
Yes, sir.
What an awesome show, the capturing stories of Americans and Americana. That's a pretty cool deal.
Right. Well, thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me and my host, my co-host. That means a lot. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. You bet. I'll have to. We'll have to get me on the schedule there because I'd love to come on your show as well.
Oh man, we'd love to have you. We would love to, and we're going to have you.
Okay, there we go. That's a done deal. Done deal. Okay, so tell me what is life of a stuntman? What is that like? I mean, that's like everybody's dream. When you're a kid growing up, you want to be a stuntman, right? You're doing it. So how cool is that?
I don't know if it was a dream of mine. I think I will say this, like I always had, I had a martial arts background. I was always interested, See,
I knew you kick people. I said that earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And but I liked action movies as a kid, as a military brat, we're weird. We're a different breed. We adapt to different situations and when you have a lot of time alone, you will watch films and watch movies. And on Sundays, my mother and I, when my dad be watching football, my mother and I after church, we would watch Kung Fu theater, right? And I always loved those, shows. I liked Bruce Lee. I liked the movie Hooper. So essentially, I think I actually liked movies, themselves, and not just action movies. One of my favorite movies is Bicycle Thieves. Didn't have a lot of action in it. So, I just think I've always kind of been in awe of the art of filmmaking. And it just happens that stunts is just something, because I've been an athlete all my life, has been something that I wanted to pursue. And it's been a good fit thus far. So that's basically the basic, I guess you'd say, kind of the intro to the life of a stuntman. There's a lot more things I could talk to you about as well that aren't as glorious.
You've been body double for some of my favorite actors. Samuel L. Jackson, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Stood in for him, and you've done Spider-Man. And I'm going to talk about some of the projects that you've done.
Yeah. So I doubled Samuel Jackson on a movie called Lakeview Terrace. I had to actually, it was a stunt, they call it a stunt acting role. So oftentimes if you're going to interact with the cast members, like I did on Spider-Man, which is where we were in a subway car, and he gets into a fight and beats up me and a couple other people. That was more of a stunt acting role. Yes, he won. But at any rate, yeah. So, I've done all the Pirates of the Caribbean, not all of them. I did Pirates of the Caribbean 2, 3, and 4. I was on the TV show Grimm for about 5 seasons, doubling a guy named Russell Hornsby. I doubled Jaimin Hansu on a movie called Elephant White. So, I've been around, I've done a lot of stuff. I also am a stunt coordinator, which is I'm just, responsible for the safety and sometimes the action design, depending on what they want. So television, commercials, I sometimes forget, because to me, it's just like, it's a job, right, Karl? I go to work and then I'll look at my resume and like, oh, wow, that's right, I did work on that. So I gotta sometimes update my resume. And my wife's always kind of telling me, hey, you need to be more, you gotta be more professional. You gotta update your resume sometimes, because, this week I worked on Bosch, Grey's Anatomy, and a new TV show called Reverie. So, it's work. It's work.
Awesome. When you do a stunt, let's just say a fairly simple stunt, how much do you have to rehearse for that stunt?
Depends, man. It depends. I'd say for things that are, I have to always clarify this and say, we don't say they're easy stunts, right? We always say there's no easy stunts, they're just different. So, you'd be surprised, the ones where you just show up and like, oh, you're just going to come in and, we're going to put a squib on you, you're going to get shot and you're going to fall. Well, that's the one that you go home sore for like, a week, and then like on 21 Jump Street, when I had to take a motorcycle and I had to lay it down under a truck, we didn't rehearse that at all. We rehearsed the sequence, but you can't really rehearse a lay down, right? You just kind of get your speed right. You get everybody kind of dialed in on where everyone needs to be at the time that I lay the bike down. So you don't rehearse the stunt, you just kind of rehearse the action. And then the stunt is just kind of like, you got to kind of cowboy up and just go for it,
Yeah, because a lot of times the equipment that you use gets pretty banged up during the stunt. So it's kind of hard to reset and do that again.
Absolutely. Amen. And look, fights we rehearse a lot. Like on Pirates, we rehearse those fights a lot. I have a Taurus award in the best fight category.
And what is that?
The World Taurus Stunt Awards is put on by Red Bull. And it's kind of like, it's an award show strictly for stunt performers. And we have different categories. And so the team that I was a part of, which was Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, we won in the best fight category for a fight on the beach and when the wheel was spinning and all that whatnot. So that whole sequence we were a part of. And we rehearsed that a lot. I mean, we spent weeks and months rehearsing, because you rehearse in a building and then you get on set and you're in a jungle and you're on a beach. And then the whole dynamic changes, right? When you have a different term. I'm sure it's like the military, right? You train and train and train, and then the firefight starts and all these different variables start coming into play and you have to kind of adjust. So I always say, as a stunt performer, you want to be a problem solver first, and a stunt man second. You gotta solve the problem first. You gotta kind of look at it and decide, okay, now we're here. Now we're on the ship. It's on a gimbal. They have a rain machine. They've got a wind machine. We've got the wardrobe on. We're soaking wet, sword slippery. So then, therefore, you have to make the adjustment.
Yeah, sure. How does, let's say, a veteran's leaving active duty? A lot of them are studying martial arts now, just as part of everything that they do, and they're in pretty decent shape. If a veteran leaving active duty wanted to go into the stunt world, how would somebody do that? And do you have to live in Los Angeles to do it? Or if you're in, say, Dallas or Chicago, are there opportunities there to do that as well?
Believe it or not, you mentioned those two cities. Very minimal, but there are shows in Dallas now. There are shows in Chicago. I just did a movie in Chicago. I was there for 2 weeks doing a car chase there. I would say yes. You know, if a veteran wants to get out, and first I'd say, you know, God bless them and thank you for your service, you know. And secondly, I'd say, yeah, I mean, you know, one of the first things that a veteran would have to do is find their local stunt community. Right now, obviously, Hollywood, we have a place called Joining All Movement, which is Jam Gym. And we where you just go to a gym and there's just all people trying to come up and get in the stunt business. They all go there. You know, when I was coming up, it was called Gymnastics Olympica in Valley College. That's where we would train. If you go to Atlanta, you know, you'd have to do the same thing. Find out where the local stunt performers and community are training. And then you start introducing yourself to stunt coordinators. And we have this thing called hustling. And you have to basically go to, you know, take your headshot, you know, picture of yourself 8x10 and your resume, and you go find movie sets. And you do basically, you're doing a little recon, and you go find a stunt coordinator and you say, hello, hi, Karl, my name is Buddy Sosthand. I'm a stunt performer. Here's my headshot and resume. And you just do that. And, you know, so it's a process. I mean, it took, everybody's story is different, Karl. You know, I took the long way. I'm the guy who kind of took the long way in. I hustled. I was a production assistant. I was a barback. I mean, I did every job imaginable. I drove limos just to sustain my livelihood while I was pursuing this career.
You know, that is a phenomenal point that you just made, because one of the things that veterans struggle with when they leave active duty is they think I should just pop right into being a manager in a company or some ideal job. And the mere fact that you served in the military for 5, 10, 20 years is not going to automatically bump you into that dream job. Sometimes you have to go in at a level maybe a little under where you want to be, prove yourself, and work your way up. And just like you talked about, hey, you got to drive a limo, you got to be a barback. I'm not exactly sure what that is. But
yeah. Well, basically, I would help the bartender out. So like when the bartender would, you know, get the drinks off the bar, you know, I'd help stock the bar. I'd grab all the dirty glasses, take them to the kitchen, come back, you know, set the olives.
Yeah. So it's doing things that you didn't see yourself doing. Negative, but because you have the goal of getting to a certain job. I mean, sometimes you got to do things that you don't want to do to work your way into it.
Yes, sir. And we have a lot of, believe it or not, we have a lot of, let's say a lot, you know, we have veterans, you know, all the way from SEAL Team 6 to Marine Force Recon to infantry to air, you know, you've got a lot of guys.
Right now, the SEALs, they're taught when they go to their the BUDS training. Yeah. I think there's 1 day of film preparation in that training. So real natural for them to move into.
Right. Yeah. But there's a transition. Do you know SEALs, Karl?
I know a couple. You know, this is my favorite SEAL joke. You know how to stop a Navy SEAL from kicking in your front door?
No.
Put a mirror on it.
I have to say that to one of my buddies. That's great. That's great.
You're free to use that for any SEAL.
I will. I'm gonna steal that because I got some buddies here. And secondly, you know, yeah, for my veterans, I'd say that, you know, there's definitely a transition because there's even a different swagger that you'll have when you become a filmmaker. So it's like whatever, and it's funny, and I mean that, and I mean that literally. If you say you're a veteran and you come out, there's a swagger you have, there's a dialogue, there's a vocabulary you have, right? And then when you get into the film business, the way that you manage certain things is going to be completely different than anything you've ever done. And so there becomes a transaction, even tactically speaking. I had to drive, I did a faith-based movie recently called Indivisible, and it was based about this chaplain. It was a chaplain who was in Afghanistan. And so we did a battle sequence and I had to drive a Humvee, you know, and so we're driving a Humvee through explosions and stuff like whatnot, right? And one of the guys who was the technical advisor, his name is Matt Siglock, and he basically just hires all veterans to come in, and they call them extra abilities extras because they're all veterans. So you can just throw them in a uniform and, you know, hang out. And there's always a transition because they're like, well, we wouldn't do this in a hot zone. I'm like, well, yes, but it's film. You know, you have your goggles on, the audience can't see Karl's wonderful face. So I know you're in a hot zone, but, you know, like you saw in Black Hawk Down, pull your goggles up so they can say, oh, that's Karl, or that's, you know, whoever actor they want to see. So there's a lot more transition than people thought. Even for me with a martial arts background, you know, the way you fight in the ring is not how you fight on film.
Sure.
You know what I mean? When you're fighting in the ring, when you're in combat, right, you get hit, you don't shake your head and make all kinds of sounds. You try to stay focused and keep everything tight and minimal. So film is from the actual job itself to the, how can I call it, the political aspect, are just completely different from anything. You can't even prepare for it. You just have to kind of just dive in and figure it out.
You said something that was real important a little bit ago too, and that is you got to put your headshot together, and then you have to work it. You have to go out and you have to talk about yourself.
Yes, sir.
That's a challenge that a lot of veterans have, is talking about themselves. They're not used to having to go out and really sell themselves to someplace. So that's something that they all need to, you got to learn to do that, whether you're going for a stunt job or you want to go work at the local corporation. You have to be able to sell yourself. And
amen. That's
definitely one of the challenges. Okay, so Buddy, tell me about your podcast. Tell me about the Great American Show that you do.
Okay, so the Great American Podcast is basically a show about true diversity, right? Diversity of thought. The idea of me and my co-host John Pirruccello, who's an actor, and he's also a military brat. His father was a pilot in the Vietnam War, and he's an actor, I'm a stunt guy. We're friends, and we would always have these conversations and debates and arguments on the phone. And I said, why don't we just start a podcast? And I mean, he was on a podcast previously that I was a guest on. And then I kind of got into a little debate with them, to say the least. And after that, I was like, well, you know what? I want to have my own, and I want to talk to people. I just want to have a true diversity of thought, meaning that I love America. I'm a patriot. And being a patriot means I'm extra critical of my country. Obviously, I support my president. I mean, I support everything, but I'm just saying I'm extra critical of the things that I think that can make us great. And I didn't feel that that's being reflected in the common narrative, especially from Hollywood. So we just said, hey, let's be two Hollywood guys, and we invite people on from the left, from the right. We just had Special Agent Bob Hamer on. That show's up right now, you know. We've had comedian Stephen Lally on, you know, who used to be a writer for Cat Williams. And so we talk about all things that are current, and we just believe that diversity of thought is the key to basically bringing America back again. We believe in uniting everyone around the flag.
Not only that, but the diversity of thought, but being able to have a conversation with someone that has a different viewpoint than yourself without it getting offended that they don't believe the same way that you do, and then you want to have a fight about it, or you want to post nasty things about them on social media or whatever. That's one of the challenges or struggles I think that we're going through right now, is people can't say, okay, let me hear you out. Let me get your perspective on this. And then let me make sure that I really understand what it is that you're saying. Dr. Stephen Covey, one of my all-time favorite authors, would say, seek first to understand, then be understood. And he would try, when he had a conversation with someone, he would repeat their viewpoint back to them until they said, yep, you got exactly the way that I feel about it. And he said, only then did he really fully understand. And he said, sometimes that changed his mind because now he understood where they were coming from.
Well, that's diversity of thought, right?
Yeah, we've lost that somewhere along the way. People are like, oh, well, you feel differently than me. Well, you're a jerk and I don't want to have anything to do with you.
Well, you know, we had sorry about that. We had Dr. Shelby Still on, and he said something. And he was talking specifically about liberalism not working and how it's failed the Black community especially. And he said, listen, you know, I want to work with Democrats, but we have to talk about the things that actually work. And that's what I think what's happened too, is where you have people that feel that are establishment types on both sides of the political spectrum that have an existential, you know, there's a threat to how they've been treating us for 50 or 60 years. When you just say, have these programs worked? You know, and he's, you know, Dr. Steele writes specifically about Black people and white guilt and whatnot, and he uses facts, not emotion, and he has some really good essays based on it. And that's kind of what we say is, okay, let me hear you out. Fine. Well, what is the bridge here? What works and what doesn't work? If we have different ideologies, that's fine. But the issue, you said something really great, Karl. You said, let's say I'm talking to a person who's a socialist, and he's got his heels dug in. Well, there's really nowhere to go anywhere with that, because if they believe in socialism, then you're not going to sway them, right? If they truly believe in that ideology, well, what do we agree on? Where can we coexist? And are you a patriot? Do you love your country? You know, is this something that you feel will better the country? Does this debate between you and I better the country, even though we may not agree ideologically? that's kind of what John and I, my co-hosts, are saying. And I love sparring. I'm not about agreeing at all. I tell people, like, that's the best. Debating, competition, that's how you get better as people. Because you said it best earlier, Karl. You hear somebody out. If you can listen to someone and hear them out, then we become better as people, whether we change our ideologies or not.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Coming from, everybody has their own background, their own experiences that all come into where they are today and what they think and what they believe.
Yes,
and
sir.
If I was in that situation, in their situation, as I grew up or went through my professional career, I might feel exactly the same way that they do. So being able to understand them, I think, is tremendously important. And I know you know this from the stunt world. I know this from the Army. We don't bleed black and yellow and white. You know, we all bleed red because we're all human. We're all the same on the inside. And that's that commonality. We need to remember, we need to come back to that because we're all the same.
Yes, sir. Well, and it's funny you said, because in the stunt community, I always say we're split, because people say, what's the stunt community politically? I go, it's probably a good split. You know, I mean, it's not like you think it'd be. It might be 50, 60, 40 even, you know. But I go, because you have somebody on belay, because you're their fire safety, because, you're going to retrieve them from a car they turn over. None of that matters. Matter of fact, my co-host, and who's my real dear friend, John, says that. He goes, as an actor, in his preparation, none of this stuff means anything when he's preparing for a scene. So that's what I think has been forgotten, Karl, in the modern era. Now, I don't want to sound too sanctimonious, maybe, because we have had a civil war in this country. So we've always fought for liberty. But I think you're right. I think what the difference now is with social media, it's just instant and you post it. And then now there's a division because I can say anything, you can say anything, and we can kind of build a movement. And now there's this division that I personally think has a bigger influence from external forces just as well as internal. So, you're right. It just seems that humanity and civility is being lost. And to me, finding that humanity and finding that civility comes from rigorous debate. So by no means am I we are the world kind of brother. You know what I mean? By no means do I believe in that. I believe that we should coexist. I believe we should have our values and we should challenge each other so we can be stronger Americans. But I want to unite it around the flag. And that's the big beef that I have, is I don't feel that a lot of people, especially on the left, share that vision of America. You know what I mean? They don't share the greatness of America, how great this country is, the sacrifices that you and people like my father, my great-grandfather fought in World War I. So, I think that those sacrifices are being lost because we've just got a culture of just cynical people. Everyone's just cynical. Well,
and they haven't seen it. They haven't seen the parts of where had you lived, if I can ask? Have you lived around the world when you were?
Yes. Well, Texas was, Texas forever.
It's its own country.
Yes, sir. Lived in Montana. I was actually born in Montana. And then my dad brought the dirt from Texas and put it under my crib. So that tells you how I was raised. So it was Montana. We lived in Texas. I've worked we lived in London, Woodbridge Air Force Base. Then through my work, I've been all over the country. I've been to Alabama. I've been to Mississippi. I've worked in Louisiana. I was in Oregon. I've literally worked, Karl, all over the country. Not every state, but I've seen a lot of places. So that's what I'm saying. To me, I'm just even more like, I don't know. I'm in awe in the beauty of this country when you travel it and you meet the people and you say, okay, this is what I don't get in Hollywood. We portray people, but we don't really sometimes get to sit, you just go down to Mississippi and you go see the Delta and you talk to that cat in the Delta, or you're in Cutoff, Louisiana, and you talk to a guy who's a fisherman and that's his livelihood. It just gives you a whole different perspective on the things that maybe people in the larger cities, the larger liberal cities, take for granted. Like something like guns. When you live out in Cameron, Montana, where there's one rancher we met, and he's got a deep freezer and he's got 6 months of food. Because he could get snowed in. So if a moose shows up or a deer shows up, he shoots it, he processes it, and he has it for the winter. So if he doesn't have a job and he doesn't have, he has just candles, but he's got food. So you just start seeing that the identity of our country, I believe, is being challenged. And I think some ways the veterans, right or left, just the fact that you guys have served, lead forward with that. And I think it's a good example for us to follow, because like you said, even in the military, you know, you're going to have guys from all different political spectrums, but you know, when it comes down to, hey, do you have my back? Do you have my back? You know, when it, you know, that's what I think we need to get back to, you know, and I think it's not about me hugging you and saying it's going to be okay. I think it's like, well, if we're going to battle, let's battle. But hey, God, family, country, man, that's first.
Yeah, and sometimes it's I'm going to kick you in the ass because
amen.
You know, we need to you need to be better and I need to be better, and that's part of having your back. So that's genius.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We do a little bit in the stunt world too. If you're not paying attention, we can go behind the trailer.
Do a little wall-to-wall counseling over here, and then we'll come back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Wait, buddy, we're coming up on the end of our time. I'm going to put your sites out. Where can people find out about you? If you want to put your website and your Twitter.
Okay. Okay, cool. So on Twitter, you know, it's what's called on Twitter. Unfortunately, we couldn't fit out the words. So it's the Great American Show, and it's at Great American 76. You can also catch us at the Great American Podcast.us. So it's www.thegreatamericanpodcast.us. We're also on SoundCloud. So you can go to SoundCloud and type in the Great American Podcast. And we're also on Facebook under the Great American Podcast. So
and your website is buddy.sosthand.com.
Yeah. I'm gonna redoing that. I'm gonna redo that. But you can also, I have a clothing line which is called AmericanStuntman76.com. And actually, before I go, Karl, American Stuntman is my way of honoring those who the keyword's American. And then Stuntman, I say, is a people who go out each and every day who, you know, that's always a concept of it. And 76 is the people who've been fighting for liberty since the beginning of the country. So that's AmericanStuntman76.com is my clothing line. So all Patriot, Karl, all Patriot. What are you going to do with me?
Tell me a little bit about the clothing. What is the clothing line? What kind of clothing is it?
It's just urban wear, T-shirts. And then we have, you know.
Hey, nice.
So there you go. I was like, that's the best way to do it. I'm not the best model, Karl, but you know what do you want from me, Karl? What do you want from me?
That's why you're a stuntman, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I prefer to be behind the scenes.
Nice. So I got to do a shout out on my T-shirt. I'm wearing my Run Ranger Run T-shirt.
Yeah.
Run Ranger Run's kicking off October. We'll have our registration will be open again for Run Ranger Run 2018. So watch the website runrangerrun.com for that. That's our annual fundraising and awareness event. Buddy, would love to have you participate in it.
All right. Let me know any way I can help. And I'm not sure I'm going to run 26 miles, but let me know where it is. And
that's not all we do. I'll just tell you real quick in a nutshell.
All right.
Back in 2012, we had a Ranger veteran that was leaving active duty, and based on experiences from his buddies and things that were going on in his own life, he decided he wanted to run 565 miles from Columbus, Fort Benning, Georgia, to Indianapolis, where he grew up and he was going back home. And along that way, he told the story of veteran transition. So he wanted to be a physical embodiment of a difficult transition from active duty. And he went on Robin Mead's CNN Salute the Troops show twice, a bunch of other interviews and things that happened along the way. And we coordinated and supported that. And through that process, he got thousands of Facebook fans. And the following year, we decided, because people had responded to it so strongly, let's turn this into something that honors what he did and see if we can expand the awareness and maybe raise a little bit of money. And he ran 20 miles a day until he got a stress fracture, and then he walked, and then we got him a bike, and he finished on a bike. So he walked, and biked 565 miles in a month. So we do it in February, and we ask people to come together in teams of 10. And can 10 people do what Corey did, 565 miles in a month? And if you split it up evenly, that's 56 miles a person. That's a little more than 2 miles a day. So, you know, it's easy to do, but you can do it walking, biking, swimming, treadmill, stair climber. We don't care, because the actual how you do your miles is much less important than getting the message out there that transition is hard. And what we do, which is, and I'll do my quick little 30-second commercial before we end, is we're like big brothers, big sisters for veterans.
Okay, amen.
And when I grew up, big brothers, big sisters was hugely important in my life, because I was raised by a single mom till my mom remarried.
Okay.
And that program was important to me. And so I've mentored a number of at-risk youth through that program over the years as well. And we've adopted some of those principles to use in connecting veterans when they leave active duty, or if they're going through an issue
Right.
with a veteran that's local to them, that's just like them, that can help them through that process. And Run Ranger Run allows us to tell that message. And then if we can get one veteran out there to connect with somebody locally and fix a problem, then everything that we've done is worth it.
Awesome. All right, well, hey, send me a link. We'll share it on the show. Please, man, I'd love to do that. Love the veterans. Shout out to Gary Sinise and the Gary Sinise Foundation with all the work he does for veterans. You guys have a lot of, regardless of what you may hear about Hollywood, there are a lot of us who look, we love our fellow Americans who act silly sometimes, and we love our country. So you'll hear me say that.
If everybody thought the same way, then we'd never get anywhere.
That's right. So, I'm down for a good old Donnybrook every once in a while.
Yeah, having different viewpoints is great. Well, we've got to learn to talk about them.
That's right. That's right.
And that's where we're learning. I also want to give a shout out to Laura Orico for getting us connected. Laura, thank you very much for the work.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. Yes.
Buddy, it's awesome. It's been great having you on the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man, Karl. And we'll be in touch, man. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to see the show.
You got it.
All right. Take care. Love the country.
Whether you're walking up to a 200-year-old Rhineland castle, riding a bike across Kansas, or running across Indiana, all your miles count for Run Ranger Run. So the important thing is get involved, have fun, and we'll see you. Run Ranger Run. Let's go.
This is Corey. He is a veteran. He proudly served the United States as an Army Ranger. When he was leaving the military life for civilian life, he decided to run from Fort Benning, Georgia to Indianapolis, Indiana, approximately 565 miles in 28 days. Why? To illustrate the difficult journey that a soldier has transitioning from military service to a civilian life. It is not as simple as taking off a uniform and starting a 9-to-5. So Corey set out to make a difference, and his friends and family chanted "Run, Ranger, Run" in support. And from this, Run, Ranger, Run was born. A 28-day event during the month of February where teams of up to 10 people, including men, women, and children, anywhere in the world, can run, ruck, bike, swim, walk, crawl, or row 565 miles to raise awareness for the challenges of veterans reintegrating back into society. Are you ready to get involved? Great. First, visit www.runrangerrun.com where you can register and either join or form a team. Make sure you tell all your friends, or follow the example of Phantom Military Lighting and get your organization and colleagues involved. Use smoke signals, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email, megaphone, or any other way to get the word out. And raise awareness and money for Gallant Few, an organization dedicated to helping our heroes successfully transition from military service to a civilian life filled with hope and purpose. Then put on your Run Ranger t-shirt and get your running shoes ready. Attend a free kickoff event near you on the last Saturday in January. And Run, Ranger, Run. The best part? Run Ranger Run is a virtual event. You can participate from anywhere at any time. Indoors, outdoors, any terrain, night or day. The only limits are those that you set. So join your friends, family, Gallant Few, and Phantom Military Lighting in the Run Ranger Run Challenge this February and celebrate making a difference for our service members in transition.
That beautiful rendition of Taps is a public domain recording created and recorded by an employee of the United States government. It is open source and not under copyright protection. Kenny Thomas' song Send Me is used by permission of Kenny Thomas. Isaiah 6:8 was read by Tim Abel. Thank you, Michael Broderick, for the introduction. All work is original or used by permission. This has been a production of Gallant Fuse, the New American Veteran, a member of the Heroes Media Group. All rights reserved.